So the title of this video is a lie. This actually isn't my first time watching Shawshank Redemption. It's actually my second because I did watch it a couple months back after I'd gotten a gift that is basically like 100 must watch movies, right? And I'd gotten this gift because as much as I say that I love movies and I love the art form, I haven't really seen a lot of the most acclaimed movies and like the essentials, right? I'm talking about things like Shawshank Redemption, Godfather, other movie, other movie, other movie. I haven't really seen a lot of them. And that's partially due to me being a little bit of a contrarian because when things are talked about and it's only ever praise, like there's never any criticism that comes along with them. I typically find that whenever I engage with them, I'm somewhat let down. And I think that's not necessarily me thinking that these things are bad or that they're just not good or that they're overhyped necessarily. I think it's just more to do with my taste. And a lot of these movies that get talked about, I see them now as movies that necessarily wouldn't be my taste. Like, again, Godfather, no shade to Godfather. Haven't watched it yet, but I typically don't find myself wanting to sit down and watch mob movies or crime boss movies or anything like that. Like that's just not what I feel. And I always saw Shawshank as a movie that was adjacent to that kind of, right? I feel like a lot of times whenever people talk about these movies, the people who hold them up the most are other men that love very masculine movies. And so I thought that's what Shawshank was going to be, right? And so I went into the movie not really being sure how much I was going to like it, how much I was going to get into it. But to my surprise, I was hooked the first scene because I was not expecting it to be as drama heavy as it was, at least that first scene, right? Because I know that this is based off of the source material from Stephen King, and I know Stephen King primarily as, the horror writer, and that's what I'm most familiar with. So I wasn't really expecting this movie to have just that kind of drama that could just like pull you in like that. Now, granted, that is also not just Stephen King and his writing. It's also because whoever was doing this adaptation, right? I didn't look up the name of the director of it, but the directing, the music, the setting, as well as the acting from Tim Robbins, who plays Andy Dufresne in this movie, it really just pulls you in, right? And I think part of it is because Tim Robbins as Andy Dufresne is amazing. He is really, really good in this movie, especially in the beginning, right? Because in the beginning, Andy is on trial for the murder of his wife and the person she was having an affair with. And so you get this beginning of the movie where you don't know if he did it or not, right? Because it shows the preceding events to their murder, but we don't actually see anything happen. And so you're kind of left wondering, did he do this or did he not do this? But in watching the cases being made, which is only about I think 10, 15 minutes at the beginning of the movie, and watching these cases being made, Andy as a character seems very cold, emotionless, kind of calculated, or like he's always something holding back. There's just something to him that is just slightly off-putting because you can't get a good read on him, right? And so he really carries this movie because once we actually get to Shawshank, we see a lot more of Andy. And it does take time because this movie, what I wasn't expecting it to be, was more so a movie about being able to find joy in some of the worst circumstances, right? Because when he gets to the prison, it sucks. It's horrible, as prison is, right? I haven't been, but you see instantly these guys are being mistreated, looked down on, and just not being seen as human. And you already get a sense of corruption and evil that is just there in the people who are running this prison, who claim to be followers of God, and they're not. They're just horrible people who are abusing this system. And by the end of the first night in this movie, you see that on full display. I'm not gonna say what that is because, just in case anybody else hasn't seen Shawshank, I don't really want to spoil it, right? But something happens that is just, it hurts. It hurts to see. And there's a moment after that, once Andy starts meeting some of the other people in this prison, where he starts to show more of his character, right? I think the great thing about Andy as a character is I think he's autistic. I think this man is just full blown autistic in the 1940s. They didn't know what autism was, but that's definitely what he is, because the dude, he's not cold. He is calculated. He's not cold. He just expresses himself differently. And there's so many moments in this movie where he acknowledges that he's just kind of different. And he feels that things happen not because he makes bad choices, but just because of how he is. And I feel like someone in that time would see it like that, right? Anyways, so as this movie goes on, we meet other characters, more specifically Red, played by Morgan Freeman, and these two are the main emotional like pillars. These two are the main emotional pillars of the movie, because most of the interaction and dialogue it happens with both of these characters. As a matter of fact, Red is the narrator for most of the movie, and there is a whole supporting cast of characters that are all a part of this little tight knit group that hang around each other. And Andy eventually makes his way into this group and becomes a member of them. And so, this movie progresses. We just follow Andy throughout all his years at Shawshank, building relationships, trying to just make things better for everybody else. And this movie, it like I said, it is about like finding joy in the worst places, and I really appreciate that. And I feel like this movie, although it might not be the most accurate depiction of prison and how bad it can be, I feel like it really humanizes people who get caught up in that system. Because if you've never known anybody who's been to jail, been to prison, been in and out of jail, it's like once you go, it's hard to stay away, because nothing about jail or prison actually fixes the circumstances outside in the real world that lead people to doing what they do to get themselves put in there. Like, there's so many different factors outside that impact you and impact your decision making, and the whole prison system doesn't do anything to fix that. It's only there to punish, and because of that punishment, it can actually make things worse. Just imagine, a community that's just not taken care of properly. A lot of the people, because of their situation, circumstances, end up getting locked up. Now you're just taking more people away from the community. That's less support from within the community, right? And so, all that to say, I love that this movie really humanizes them, because a lot of times people, they just want to be able to live their life. They just want to be able to, I've heard so many people say like, I just want to work, right? And this movie, we see so many moments of characters just being there for each other, having their own community, right? Now, as joyous as this movie is, it is not without its heartbreak. Like, there is still plenty of that. This movie does also comment on how once you are out of this system, especially once you've been in there for years, it's hard to go back to the real world. It changes you. And someone who is actually like a prison abolitionist could probably give a better breakdown of maybe what's wrong with this depiction. But for me, I view it as great. And this movie was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was so much more than what I expected. And I'm really glad that I sat down and watched it. And I would recommend everybody to watch it if you haven't already seen it. I already know it's one of the most popular movies, and that is one of the most highly rated movies ever. And I think it's very, very deserving of that, because it's well worth the watch, right? And with all that praise being said, I think the one negative that I would give this movie is that it isn't enough. Like, there could be so much more. In watching it, which I already noticed the first time, but in watching it the second time especially, I felt if this were to get adapted again, right, this would make a great 8 to 12 episode miniseries, because there are so many moments in this movie, whether they be the good, the bad, the sad, that don't really get a whole lot of time to breathe for you to really take in everything that happened. Especially some things that happened to Andy early on in the movie. They happen, you get like another 30 seconds of narration about it, and then it pops up another time in the movie. but we don't really get like a whole, like we don't really get a bigger time frame to just sit down and really take that in. And so I think if you made this like 12-30 minute episodes, there's so many points, so many plot points and character moments in these movies that you could definitely put into a whole episode, right? I think that is the only negative I can think of about this movie. Oh, one more positive. Another thing I really like about this movie is that even though it takes place in like the 40s through the 60s and it was made in the 90s, this movie shows so much respect and not just throwing out slurs and just being weird. I really appreciate that. It's 1940s. Not once did I hear the N-word get dropped. Ever. Didn't happen. It was amazing. There is one slur that's said in the movie, but it's one you don't hear that often, and it's not aimed at a black person, and it's also from the worst character in this movie, the worst person. So, hey, that's it's fitting for the time, I guess. But it is just very nice because it shows a lot of respect to, it shows respect to black people, and I feel like it also shows a lot of respect to neurodivergent people. Like I said, Andy is autistic. If you watch the movie, the man is autistic, like he just is, and so. Yeah, if you are like me and you haven't also seen Shawshank Redemption, I would recommend that you go watch it. It's a great movie.